Hey everyone, I just wanted to throw up a video that talked about my initial experiences with the A9. It's a new channel, so I'm still figuring some things out, lighting-wise and everything, so thanks for your patience. And I hope to share some of the stuff as I learn more about it as well. Real quick on the camera, the first Sony camera I had was an a7S, and then I got an a7 II, and an a7S II, and a7rII. So I've used four of these things. And then I got the A9 recently. And, you know, a lot of the focus on this thing has been about the really just crazy speed. So in case you don't know, the top end, like flagship cameras from Canon and Nikon go up to, 12, 14 FPS, which is what they use for Olympics and sports and the highest of high-end events. And this guy does 20 frames a second. And the way he pulls it off is that there's no, well, there is a mechanical shutter, but in order to get the very high speeds, you use the electronic shutter. And that's great. And that's the reason it's got a lot of attention, but that's not actually why I bought it. I mean, I do occasionally do some wildlife stuff, but really for the most part, it's more regular stills and a lot of video. And I just wanted to point out a few things, particularly from somebody who has the other Sony cameras and is curious, like, is it worth getting this if I have the other ones? Because, for example, the a7rII takes 42 megapixel stills, and this only does 24. And so I was kind of weighing my options with that. So, I've got an a7S II for video, an AR2, a7R2 for stills, and I wasn't really sure even when I got it, I wasn't really sure if it was the right call to have something that was kind of in between the two. But I have to say, I'm extremely happy that I ended up getting this. And if for no other reason, even if I never use it for a single stills thing ever, the video support is incredible. So the quality is truly amazing compared to the other a7R cameras, and certainly better than any DSLR that I'm aware of. And part of that is just because it's actually sampling a 6K image down to 4K. So the quality is well beyond anything I've seen with a7S II or the a7R2, even with an external recorder plugged in. The quality is just absolutely amazing. So even if it was only for that, I would say it's worth it. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you are doing, a lot of people have compared this to the flagship Canon and Nikon cameras. And there's some downsides compared to those cameras, but like there are so many upsides for the high speed photography stuff that I can't overemphasize how important that is. So for example, like as you're shooting 20 frames a second, there's no blackout, which is totally common. I used a D500. I actually have a D500, a Nikon D500, which is meant to be for wildlife and fast action. And it's pretty disorienting, honestly, having the viewfinder black out as you're trying to follow fast action. And this doesn't happen here. There's no sound. There's focus points all over the frame, which is something that really threw me off initially when I started using DSLRs. I started on mirrorless and actually started on Leica. And the fact that you're looking through the frame and you A, don't see what the exposure is, and B, more importantly, like you can't just focus anywhere you want. It has to be clustered in the middle of the frame on the high-end DSLRs. And this guy, like many of the Sony cameras, are just edge to edge almost focus points, which is really how it should be. So I'm just completely thrilled by that. And so you can see everything that's happening in the frame. You can focus pretty much anywhere. And then on top of all that, it's actually cheaper than the highest end Canon and Nikon, the 1DX and the D5. And it's actually way smaller, so like there's different reasons that you may want a bigger camera, and you can get the external grip for this guy, but you always have the option to go down to this small compact package, because there's all kinds of scenarios, even for personal stuff, where you may just want to have a smaller package and a smaller lens. This is the Sony 85mm G Master, but there's all kinds of reasons you may want to put like a smaller 35 on here just to have something small to carry around with without having to own multiple cameras. So like, I think, there are maybe some criticism about this camera, but it is so much better overall, in my opinion, than absolutely everything else out there, that I want people to understand how great that is. Again, even if you were only looking at this for like the video capabilities, it truly would be worth it. A few things real quick for the people who are familiar with other Sony a7 cameras. Some of the things you might appreciate. So this traditionally, when you actually want to, on other A7 series cameras, when you want to change the focus mode, you actually have to go into the menus and do it. And on this camera, you can actually just hold down this button in the front and then rotate it, and you can switch modes. And I use this all the time, and it's absolutely fantastic. And the other thing you have probably heard about is that the battery life is much longer in these compared to the other A7 cameras. I never actually found that to be a huge problem. I would just carry multiple batteries, but it's nice to not have to worry about it. I mean, the battery lasts a really long time, and I got some extras just to be sure, but really I almost never need them. And one last thing real fast as far as compared to the other cameras, if you've got this thing now where you can go into My Menu, and I think actually maybe one of the other Sony cameras has it, but I've never owned a Sony camera with this feature. It's this My Menu thing, and it allows you to just add the things that that you want to get to all the time, which I find super helpful because often I had to dig through the menus. Even if I knew where they were, it would just take a while to get there. So even that small addition is really welcome. So I would say I can imagine a couple cases where somebody might be considering this camera. It is obviously not a cheap camera at all. It's a few $1,000s. But if you are somebody who mixes stills and video, or even just wants to have a really compact, super, super high quality video camera, I don't know of a better option at this size and this sort of relative price point. I mean, until you go into the really high-end cinema cameras like Red or something, I just don't know of something else that's this good. I mean, the complaint people have is that it doesn't have S-Log support for the profile, but I messed around with that a few times and I felt that it, for my purposes at least, although I'm familiar with grading flat footage, I just found that I wasn't able to get the results that I wanted, so I kind of stopped using that. So personally, I don't miss it, but I can understand why people might. But even if you have other A7 cameras, I keep saying other, this is obviously the A9, but if you have other full frame Sony cameras, I would still say it's worth it if you want to shoot video, because the video is so much better than the other ones. And also compared to the a7R II, a major difference is that with the a7R II, you pretty much had to shoot in crop mode to get the highest quality. And with the a7S, it was the reverse. You would want to shoot in full frame to get the highest quality. And in this one, you can switch between Super 35, so crop mode, or full frame, and there's no perceivable difference between the two. And as just a side note, I shot some video of the moon one night, and I shot it directly to the internal codec, and then I also shot with the same camera, same A9. I shot with the external recorder, and I wasn't able to see a difference. And that's kind of an unusual situation. I mean, moon shots are really strange because the moon itself is super bright and the background's dark. But for whatever it's worth, there was no apparent difference to me. So I would say that the video quality is fantastic. There is some difference in the quality between 24 megapixels and 42 for stills, but in many, many cases, 24 is actually enough. So I would just say that, having owned or currently owning other Sony cameras, I had some hesitation about getting this one, even if just for the fact that it was 24 megapixels, but also just in general, I wasn't sure if there was a big enough difference from the other cameras. But I have to say, I'm really thrilled with everything about this camera. It's just really, it's the fantastic evolution of the A7 line, and I plan to use it quite a bit in the future. So thanks a lot. If you have any thoughts, please share them below. Thank you.